So to have the opportunity to work with a team of writers to figure out how each of our player classes is going to respond, how they feel, and to really dive into the character was really a unique opportunity to bring the emotional landscape of the game to life in a way that we've not done before. And it was really moving. You know, this game is heavy. I think we all know that. There's some pretty heavy storylines and epic character arcs that happen. So to work with the characters on that and the actors was great. You know, for example, the demon hunters, they had a lot of tragedy in their life. So they're kind of walking around Tristram all pissed off. Whereas the witch doctor is a bit more zen and has empathy for the zombies, if you can believe it. So to be able to play with characters like that and create their emotional response to the game was really amazing. And it really got to the point where the player characters, we had about 20 sessions with them. And so by the end of it, they were dreaming as the demon hunter and the monks and so forth. And they would come into the studio and have their own opinions on what the character thought, who they are, and how they would react. So to build these, I call the characters people, because by the end of it, they became people. And they had thoughts and concerns and emotions and reactions that any of us would. So to have 16,000 lines to work with was amazing. The other thing I want to point out, and I'll stop talking, is that we worked really hard to really populate the land of D3 with a lot of what we call incidental roles, meaning female villager 2, soldier 3, barkeep, etc. So we spent a lot of time finding just the right voice so that every person you interact with is really going to have a personality. They're not random voice in the background. Each little background role could have a story. They each have their emotions. So my point is to really work and have this many lines to work with and this much time and opportunity to create such an epic game so that you can really immerse yourself in the game and experience it and be there with them was really critical for us. So for me, that was the biggest benefit for D3 and how it varied from the other games, is to have that much content to play with.
Thanks, Andrea. So, Mike, I hear there's monsters in Diablo 3.
Hi. Yes. Hello.
Do you work on those by any chance?
I am one of the lucky few that is creating content for creatures on Diablo 3, yes.
So why don't you tell us a little bit about your process for creating monster sounds?
Okay. Can I start with a survey first?
Yes, you may.
Okay. So how many people in the audience like monsters? Okay, that's pretty good. How many people in the audience like killing monsters? There you go. Okay, so do I. Well, you're going to get plenty of opportunity to do just that in Diablo 3 because we have 60 unique creature types in the game so far. So I just have to say, like with Andrea, I'm just a big geek when it comes to Diablo as well. I played Diablo 1 and Diablo 2, and when I was playing it 10 years ago, I actually applied to Blizzard North and didn't get the job. So, you know, perseverance pays off, and now here I am. It's kind of like a dream come true, actually working for Blizzard and working on the creatures that I liked so much in Diablo 1 and Diablo 2. So we had big shoes to fill. There were some great sounds in those games, and we had to not only meet the caliber of those games, but also in Blizzard fashion to also raise the bar as well. So talk about some of the things that we do. One of the things that we do work as a team. So besides Joseph and Chris and I that are on stage, we also have a couple guys as well, Dave Roven and Evan Chen, working on creatures as well. I didn't want to leave them out. So one of the other things that we do, kind of like 3 different ways we kind of create monsters. It all depends whether they're kind of like humanoid based or whether or not they were humans at one time and transform into something else, or things that aren't based on human physiology at all, or any combination of the above. But one of the big things to have is to have a really good anchor sound that you can have as form as the basis of any creature. And the first thing that we did was actually work with Andrea to actually get a short list of actual specialized voice actors that really work on making creature vocalizations. So Andrea gave us a list of all these people that she knew from her Rolodex that actually do make really good creature sounds. And one by one, we called them, we worked together, looked at the animations of what the monsters were coming down the pipe, and decided who would have to be the best vocal fit for each of the monsters. And that was a process, because sometimes you'd like something and then you find out that person's already doing something else in the game on the same level. So you're probably like, well, I can't have this whole level having this guy doing every monster, because then they're all going to sound the same. So we kind of work together to kind of divide up who we're going to use for which monster. But so getting the vocalization from actor is really good. The second thing, which Joseph had talked about, was basically going out and collecting source material for monsters, for the monsters, like pigs and elephants, horses, goats, llamas, llama spit, llama.
I hate llamas.
Llama everything. You know, everything. Dogs, cats, you know, pretty much everything. And then using that as a basis for a monster. So, and then the third thing we basically do is take a really good human character vocalization, you know, and mix that with some element of an animal, and put those two elements together, and that would be a really good source for a creature. And then the other thing we could do from that is, let's say, well, we have a really good monster that really works great, but you know, you really can't, you know, stick the microphone into in a VO booth and record a demon, because they really don't exist. So you try to get that person who does a really good demon vocalization, and then they have to be really big, so maybe you might put an elephant on there, but then you finally get the final artwork and all of a sudden it's on fire. So it's like, oh, great. So we'll go out and record some fire, and then we'll layer all three of those things together, and we'll have a fire-breathing demon, you know, for one of Diablo's minions that's coming to kill you. But anyway, I just want to say I really feel blessed to be here, and I'm like yourselves. Like, I work on the game, and I can't wait for this game to come out. So I think I'm done.
All right, way to go, Mike. Thanks.
All right, Chris with a K.
That's me.
Chris has been doing some amazing work on the skills, and so Chris, I'd like to ask you, when you're creating sounds for the skills, how do you consider the player when you're doing your design on those?
Well, being a gamer at heart, I play a lot of games myself, and I can sit down and play long sessions of gaming, and audio can get kind of repetitive at times. So, being a gamer, I try to you know, instill replayability and randomization as a sound designer. So to go about that, I will go into my digital audio workstation, and I will create a sound, and usually skills have anywhere from 3 types of sounds, like a cast, a projectile loop, and an impact. And within those 3 different categories, I'll then create variations upon each of those, anywhere from 5 to 10 or so. And then I will distill it down into distinct layers. I will organize it like that. And then at that point, half of my fun as a sound designer is implementation as well. So I get to spend a lot of time taking my own sounds, putting them in the game, and that's where I get into the randomization type of area. And within this, I can, when I go into setting the sound, say there's a cast sound or something like that, that sound can have anywhere from 1 to 3 layers, possibly. And within those 3 layers, I can then go in and set slight volume differences, pitch shifting, and I can set a small min and max range within this. So every time you play a sound, it'll play slightly different. And along with that, we can also add effects, like real-time effects, like low-pass filtering, EQs, distortion, and within those settings as well, I can then randomize those. So with all these things combined, and a lot of time spent implementing my own sounds, I can make it sound so it's not quite as repetitive all the time, and hopefully within each sitting of you guys playing, that you won't hear the same sound twice. You know, it'll always sound a little different, and hopefully you guys will just keep playing longer and longer, because I expect you guys to be playing this game over and over and over. Thank you.
Thanks, Chris. All right, so I'm going to turn it over to Russell now so he can have a little chat with the guys who make the music for our games.
The music of Diablo 3. Someone mentioned earlier about having big shoes to fill, and one of the things that struck me when I played Diablo 1, though so many years ago, was that Matt Ullman, who wrote the original music, he did something that's very hard to do in this day and age. He created something original. He created something kind of unexpected, and it became iconic and just perfect. So in keeping with eclectic nature of the music that he created for the earlier games, we picked up that thread. We studied where he was going as he went into Diablo 2 and Diablo 2 expansion, and we started hearing orchestral instruments, live orchestras. In fact, it was probably one of the earliest uses of live orchestra in a video game was in the Diablo series. And so, as I talked about in the video, we handled the recording of the orchestral portions in a completely different way than we have on the other projects. So even though it's a lot of the same composer faces you're used to up here, we tried to write differently, but we also recorded differently. And I went overseas and recorded this Irish choir called Anuna. And I got this Gaelic accent, a seductive, beautiful sound for the sounds of hell, because I thought hell should be pretty in a very strange way, seductive. With that, I wanted to ask my fellow composers here. I work mainly on the cinematics, but we have Lawrence, we have Derek, and we have Glenn. And Glenn, I wanted to ask, because the sounds of the music of Diablo are so eclectic, it wasn't all orchestra, right? You used other things, you used other means. Can you talk about that?
Yeah, I can talk a little bit about that. Yeah, obviously orchestra was a big element of what we did, live orchestral instruments as well as synthesized and sampled instruments. I guess to touch a little bit on each phase of the composing process might be a good thing to outline where those interesting and unique sounds come from, because sometimes it's in the concepting and composing phase, sometimes it's later on. So maybe I'll touch a little bit on each one of those phases. The concepting phase is usually just mentally or listening to other people's music, listening to past music that we've done, identifying those unique textures. And one of my best music teachers told me, music is about setting a set of limitations. It's choosing a sound palette. The possibilities are endless, so you have to limit yourself, or you'll never get anything done. So choosing the sound palette for Diablo is sometimes obvious, sometimes not. I think obviously guitar has been a huge part of it, and I had to embrace that in some of the stuff I wrote. Not necessarily in the same way as it was done for the past games, because I wanted to try to evolve it, and sometimes it's hard to write exactly like somebody else, obviously. That being said, yeah, in the concepting phase, I knew orchestra was a big element. I knew guitar would be there, and we also brought in some newer instruments. We had an electric a cellist named Tina Guo, she played here at BlizzCon last year. She's a fantastic classical cellist and electric cellist. She brought some really interesting textures and very heartfelt melodies and exotic melodies that just fit perfect in this universe, if you ask me. Lawrence played some fantastic guitar parts for some of the things I wrote that you'll hear in the later acts, which I can't talk about the acts so much, but the music itself. I wanted to say, so in the concepting phase, you have to know what you want, and moving on to the composing phase, choosing instruments that blend well together. Even in the orchestra, taking instruments that don't sometimes blend well together or that aren't the typical thing can be really interesting, especially the darker and lower strings and brass and maybe do something interesting with a low woodwind that plays a high note mixed with something else that you wouldn't do typically. That, for me, that type of texture, it doesn't sound like the standard orchestra, and it lends itself to the Diablo universe. Moving on into the recording phase,